For this video, we're going to show how to install your chains for tracks for all of the different types of track patterns out there, since there's going to be a couple variations of how the track patterns work with the chains. So to start, this is our C-block track, and so how to install them is you take the welded fixed end, so the side that's welded to the chain, and you're going to install it in between the C pads. So this is going to go right in between, and then you're going to run it straight across with the opposite side, the nut and bolt, inside of this C-shaped pad. So you're going to unthread it, and then make sure that the majority of the nut side is down and the link is on the upside. And then you're gonna slip the bracket and the bolt in there. And then you're gonna thread it on by hand first, just like that. And then, in our instructions, we recommend to not use an impact, just because a lot of people, they try to install them just with the impact without hand threading them first, and they cross thread the nut and the bolt. And by doing that, you're gonna have all sorts of problems, and it's just not gonna be good. So you're gonna wanna start it by hand, and if you do use an impact, then you get it on tight. Just like that, and so that it doesn't move and you won't have any problems. If you're going to be installing them for the entire winter, it's good practice to use some thread lock to put them on there if you just want to put them on and not have to touch them. We recommend after the first about 10 minutes to go back through and retighten them all. As you operate it for the first couple of minutes, the chain's going to kind of find its place on the track, so it's just good to just go back in, recheck them just to make sure that they're nice and tight. And then each track is going to have 7 chains. Is what they are. There's 14 in a set, and so to install them correctly for this track pattern specifically, you're going to want to count each pad, so each C, and to check your spacing. So after you count them all, then you're going to divide it by 7 to see what it comes out to know exactly how many you need to space to put a chain to have them pretty close to about the same measurement. So this is a common track on mini excavators. So to install the chain for this, you're going to stick it on that side, make sure that the welded fixed end is on the inside, and then undo the opposite side. Make sure that the chain is down in the groove, and then hand tighten the nut and bolt. And then make sure it's nice and tight. Okay, so this is a multi-bar track. For this machine specifically, it's pretty difficult to get our bracket around the track just because the track is a little bit closer to the frame than other machines. And so for something like this, you can feed it up underneath, something like that. Now I'm gonna install this actually down here. So you just feed it up and around and then it works. You're gonna wanna make sure you get it on nice and snug. And for the multi-bar track, you're going to install it straight across. Make sure to hand thread first before you go crazy with your impact. Just like that. We're going to install our chain for this H track pattern. It goes by several different names. The wavy H pattern, vortex. It's very common to come on Kubotas. So for this one, I've got to fish it up through the track, just like that. And so the welded fixed bracket is going to sit in between the 2 H pads, just like that. You're going to run the chain straight across, and you're going to install the nut and bolt inside of the H. The reason why you do that is because it gives it something to kind of hold on to, so it's not sliding around or anything. And so we're gonna hand thread it on first, just like that. And then Make sure it's nice and tight. Check it. For the H pattern, that is the 15-inch wide or 15 and a half, whatever it comes out to. You can install the chain very similar to this one, the 17-inch, where you install it straight across with the nut and bolt inside of the H. Since the track is a little bit more narrow on the 15, the chain is going to sit more like this, where it's on top of the two pads. So it's going to be sticking up. So if you notice that there's a lot of vibration issues for your machine specifically, installing them with the longer bolts provided, more like that at an angle, it allows the chain to have a groove to sit down into. You won't feel as much vibration by doing that setup. You won't have nearly as much of a bite, but you will still feel the difference with the operating and with the vibration. So here's an example of what the chains would look like on this excavator with the rubber tracks. So very similar. Install the welded fixed end and it just goes straight across with the nut and bolt installed on the other side. We're going to be installing the chain on the zigzag track, and so undo the side, stick that on there. You're going to want to make sure that the bracket is sitting really nice and flush against that track. So if you need to pull on it, rubber mallet, you know, pull that, and then hand start the threads on this side. Since the nut and bolt kind of sit down in, sometimes you kind of have to look at it from a different angle just to start it. And so when you install the chain, it's going to be down in the groove the whole time, so it has something to kind of sit down into. Once you hand start the threads on there, make sure that that is nice and pulled tight. Then you're going to just get it nice and tight. So to install chains for this D-block track, you'll slip the bracket in. This machine has plenty of space, so I can just slip it right over the front. Other machines, as you've seen, we've had to go through the inside, but this one's just fine. And then make sure it's in between the two pads, and then come across here. And so when you're installing this, the bracket is up here in between these two pads, and then you're going to come down at an angle just like this. Start it by hand so that the chain has kind of a groove to sit down into. It's okay if part of the chain is up on this side, but just as long as the brackets itself have something to sit down into, it'll keep that bracket from shifting and moving around from when you're sliding and operating your machine. So then we take our impact after you hand thread it first. Then as you can see, once I got that all tightened up, you know, the chain did come up, which is totally fine, just as long as you check it and make sure it's nice and secure. So for this track pattern, it's very common to come on John Deere's. It's going to be very similar to install, just like previous ones. So you're going to slip the bracket around just like that. Again, if you need to go underneath, that's an option as well. Undo, and then make sure again that the link is up top and that the majority of the nut is down below. Just makes life a little bit easier when you go to install them. Just like that, hand thread it. Just like that, double check, you're good to go. So once you have that first one installed, each track pattern is going to vary just a little bit. So something like this, you can either count every single one of these blocks all the way around to figure out exactly how many you have, divide it by 7, and then you'll figure out your spacing. If you decide that you want to run more than just 7, same thing. If you have 8 per side, then just divide by 8 and go from there. So then you know that from one chain, it's, you know, say it's like 5. You count 5 and then you install another chain. So then you know what measurement you need. Every machine and every track is so different, so we're not able to tell you exactly how many, the spacing per chain, so that's just something that you'll have to figure out But after you know, for your machine specifically, how many spaces, it's a lot faster for you to install, just because in your head you know every 7, boom, you install a chain. And so the reason why this spacing is so important is because we offer 7 chains per track. So in a set you'll get 14, but the reason why it's 7 specifically and not a different number is because it allows you to always have 3 chains on the ground at all times per side. And so it's a very consistent, even motion as you're operating the machine. You don't have what we call the teeter-totter effect, to where if you had less than 7, then as you're rotating around, it's gonna rock back and forth as the chains come up and around. So by getting that spacing as close to even as possible, will create that, having the 3 on the floor, and be very consistent as you operate the machine, and for the traction specifically as well. So if you need to learn more or want to learn more about how to measure your track specifically, which direction or what chains you need, we have a completely separate video on that subject. So feel free to go check that one out. And after watching that one, if you still have more questions, feel free to call us as well. Our phone number will be in the description as well as on our website.